Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Tent of Abraham. Before we start this week's teaching, there's some things that I would like to address. It's actually quite important that I address them. Over the past few weeks, some things were taught over here. I understand many of you are confused. Even though you can read everything that was said directly from the text, just remember that when I began the Tent of Abraham, I said I was going to teach everything from a Jewish perspective, from a Jewish standpoint. This is where I'm coming from. This is what I'm teaching. So I'm not going to apologize for what was said. I stand by everything 100%. But what I will say is this. I would ask for your forgiveness if I was insensitive with the delivery. Okay, I maybe rubbed some of you the wrong way. Regardless, everything I said was true. So in this case, you have to check yourselves, but please forgive me if I was insensitive to where you guys were coming from. We all come from different backgrounds, and I think that this is the point right now. You forget where I come from, I forget where you're coming from. And there's a lot of you out there. There's just one of me over here. So one thing we do have in common, though, and that I believe is why we're all here, is that we are all seeking the truth in one way or another. I know this could be a pit stop for you to go someplace else, or you've come from another place and now you're here. Who knows? I'm on a journey myself, and I'm learning as this process goes along. I don't have a map written out. I take this day to day, and I just get what he gives me. So we're all on this journey together. It's as if I was explaining this to somebody, like I was walking through the desert, dry and parched myself, and all of a sudden just this like oasis sprang up around me, and just this beautiful greenery, and it needs to be watered, and I'm watering it. That's just where I find myself right now. Again, I have no idea how this happened, yet this is where I find myself. Each one of you out there who's in pain, I want you to know that I feel your pain, and I've been there myself. I know rejection, I know confusion, I know betrayals, I know persecution, I know darkness, I know silence, I know loneliness, and I know solitude. And I can tell you, all of you, the only thing that got me through this, really, the one true thing, it's actually the Word of God. It's Torah, and seeking the truth within His Word. It's the only light, no matter where you are in your life. If you take everything away, that's the only thing that's left that is actually true. It's the grinding and the testing that produces that oil, right? We learned this. And that oil keeps the flame lit. And it's lit just enough to get us by one more step. Just enough to help us make it through the day. So many things have to happen in order for us to get through this together, but many things have actually happened to me over the past 3.5 years. One day, I'll share it. But understand now why I'm going through the things that I'm going through. You're also going through your things right now. The revelations that you've received, the revelations that I've received, they're all starting to make sense to me. I'm speaking from my point of view right now. Everything that happened to me in the past, all of a sudden it's starting to make itself known to me now. I know what I saw, I know what I know, and now slowly but surely it's starting to reveal. The revelations are revealing themselves, if you will. So as I continue to walk with God and seek the truth, we're making more and more, this whole thing becomes more and more sensible, if you will. I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, last month. Probably not even yesterday. We all have our walk. We all have our lech lecha, right? This is how Abraham was introduced to us. Go, get out. So it would seem that this one is mine, as of now. I cannot and will not waver, though, with what I believe is the true Word of God. You're more than welcome to disagree, and just know that I will not compromise anything that I teach over here, whether it's any kind of falsities just to for lip service or to make people feel comfortable. Don't get me wrong. Of course, I want you to feel comfortable. But again, the truth is the truth. So all I could do is work on my delivery of it. So even if you disagree with what is said, at least recognize that we are on the same side. We're probably arguing the same thing from a different viewpoint, but we're arguing on the same thing. In most cases, this is what happens even in life. So, as I had stated in my very first introduction video to the Tent of Abraham, I hope we can reason with one another for the sake and the love of the truth. This is, after all, the Tent of Abraham, and all are welcome. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for joining me. Oh no, we're not done. We're just getting started. And now, without further ado, let's get into Parashat Vayikra. He called. Parashat Vayikra is in Leviticus 1, chapter 1, verses 1 to chapter 5, verses 26. And this one is called Pick Up. We begin the book of Leviticus with a slightly different address to Moses. While in other times God speaks or says Vayomar, Vayedaber to Moses, this time he calls him. And he called to Moses. And the Lord spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Vayikra el Moshe, Vayedaber Adonai elav me'oel moed le'emor. Since we know there are no redundancies in the Torah, this means something significant. Now, within this very first word, just the first word, by the way, the entire study is going to be just on this one word. Within this word is buried the essence of the entire book of Leviticus. And within the book of Leviticus is actually all the secrets of creation, if you will, of the beginning, the middle, and the end. I'll explain. You know I will. Now, for those of you who have been following my teachings, you should already know by now how much context is important. You can't just regurgitate some verse here and there and prove your point. That's not how it works. This kind of thought would not work, let's say, in a modern day courtroom, okay? So it's definitely not going to work here when we're trying to learn Torah. Not to mention that you might be one of the main reasons for deception and false doctrines out there. That's what people do. They cut and they paste whatever is good for them, for their narrative. So just grabbing whatever verses suit your narrative, again, you build your own story, case closed. But that's not the truth. Now is it? It's your opinion. Don't get that confused. A lot of people do. This is also why we use the works of our sages to help steer us in the right direction. Nobody alive today has better context than Chazal. Chachamenu zichronam livracha. These are our sages of blessed memory. Okay? They knew so much Torah, and people have asked me this before, and I have discussed this before. They knew so much Torah that they could lay it out like a map. Just what you and I could put together, a dot here, a dot there. I gave this example in the past. It's like the Torah is like a Monet, right? And every person could only standing just close enough to see a dot. But the further away you get, you're starting to see now, groups of colors. The further away you get, the greater the outlook. All of a sudden, you see images, you see pictures. You could start connecting the dots, and you see things. So this is how the sages became the sages. So they knew exactly where to go. They knew exactly what they were looking for based on context, subtext, history, and extra-biblical text. So they put all that together. Not to mention a lifetime of serving the Lord with all their hearts for His name's sake. And so I would venture to say that there is some wisdom in their words. There's divine knowledge and understanding. So just like our sages, we're going to put things up in context so we can better understand just how awesome this calling that Moses had was. Vayikra picks up right where we left off in the end of the book of Exodus. So if we turn back to Exodus 40, 34 to 35, we can read, "And the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the Mishkan. And Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud rested upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the Mishkan." But wait a minute. Since when can Moses not walk into the cloud? Right? It's very strange because he was just up there on Mount Sinai. Go to Exodus 24:15. It says, "And Moses went up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain." Here's Moses in the cloud. Now, I want you to notice a pattern right here. Exodus 24:16, the very next verse, it says, "And the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days." And then what? "And he called to Moses on the 7th day from within the cloud. Vayikra el Moshe bayom hashvi mitoch ha'anan." So Moses is clearly, he's in the cloud, and then he went further into the cloud. And also, we have the very first encounter between God and Moses. And this is in Exodus 3, verse 4, when Moses was first called. The Lord saw that he had turned to see, and God called to him from within the thorn bush. Vayira Adonai, kisar lirot, that Moses turned to see. Vayikra elav Elohim. Elohim called to him. Mitoch hasneh, from within the burning bush. So in this first encounter, right here, it is said that God saw that Moses turned to see. He saw that he turned. Now, I would venture to say that if anyone else were with Moses at that point in time, they would not have seen the sight of the burning bush. It was something very personal. But it was because Moses made a conscious decision to turn his body, his heart, and his mind towards this holiness that God called him. I believe it first came from him. Then later on, we see Moses' humility as he ascended the mountain in Exodus 24. In the past teachings, I've taught that the people saw a thick, dark fog, right? They were frightened, but it had the opposite effect on Moses. He drew near, while what Moses saw was this fresh, bright light. God is in the eyes of the beholder. So, how do you behold God? So just like in Exodus, Moses did not enter until he was called. So too here in Leviticus, Moses did not enter until he was called. But this call, this is a very special call. This one is different. This one is personal on a spiritually emotional level. What do I mean by this? Okay. God called Moses as a friend, same level, almost as equals as one could be with God, also known as he and God were one. In the last 5 verses in the book of Exodus, the cloud is mentioned 5 times, once in every verse. What do these 5 mentions of clouds signify? 5 candles. No, I'm just kidding. You guys are asking about that for some reason. It signifies the 5 voices that were heard when the Torah was given. The Torah was given in chamesh kolot, or chamisha kolot. One of those 5. However, we discussed in previous teachings that Moses was able to comprehend up to 7. 7, and 7 what? 7 sfirot. We also discussed this. And God let him glance at the 8th when he was in the cleft of the rock. When he covered his eyes, 8. Tefillin, back of the head. That's what he saw. So in these last 5 verses, it speaks of the cloud 5 times. And the extra 2 are when it speaks of the tiferet, the glory, and the kavod, the honor. Now, I think glory is also the Shekhinah, but again, these are the best translations that we got. So tiferet, glory. So this is directly linked to 2 Chronicles 7, verses 1 through 2. And when Solomon finished praying, and the fire descended from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. Just like the glory of the Lord filled the Mishkan, same thing over here, same language. Kvod Adonai maleh et habayit. And the priests could not enter, just like right now they could not enter the house of the Lord because the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. So where there is all God, there can be nothing else. We know that. The less there is of us, the more there is of him. You know what I'm saying. This is the same glory that we see right here at the end of Exodus. And no one could enter unless you received the call. So, not only was Moses humble when God called him in the beginning, but he continued to be humble, and he was continuing to humble himself as God was exalting him. Moses was the real deal. The higher up he was taken, the smaller his ego became. Moses had a true understanding of God and all his goodness, and he really wanted nothing of himself and all of God. So when God called him, Moses was the only one who could hear the call. Only Moses, out of all of Israel, not Aaron, not Joshua, just Moses. You want to know why? Because the glory, the splendor that was inside the Mishkan was also inside of Moses. God saw a piece of himself standing outside with everyone else, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing over there? Get in here, you." Verse 1, and he called to Moses. This call, this is the call. So the Mishkan that would house God's Shekhinah had been constructed on earth as it had been shown to Moses in heaven. Through Moses and his merit, he was able to instruct all those who God called, each man and woman according to their gifts and talents. And even though not all of Israel necessarily participated, it was counted as such. This is where we get the concept of arvut. All Israel are bound to one another, and we are only as strong as our weakest link. So this is the call that the heavenly hosts, the seraphim, would cry out aloud, and this is in Isaiah 6. V'kara ze el ze ve'amar, this one to that one, and one called to the other and said, Kadosh, 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 holy, 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 is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Melo kol haaretz kevodo. This three holy count is the subtext of how Moses was actually called. These are the roots of the Torah and the cornerstone of our faith. So what are they? 1, the renewal of the world. 2, the giving of the Torah to Israel. And 3, the resurrection of the dead. And these three inyanim, as Chazal say, inyanim is a matter. These three matters happen at the beginning of time, in the middle of time, and at the end of time. And each of these matters leads to the next, which leads to the next. The reason it's called a renewal of the world is because there were two accounts of creation, Genesis 1 and 2, right? So first there was a creation, and then there was a renewal. Now, how do these three matters tie in one to another? See, the prophecy that Moses was given is a testament to God's direct hashgacha. This is supervision. Supervision. Superman had hashgacha. Without God's supervision on this world, moment by moment, this world could not exist, right? Without God's direct protection and supervision of his children Israel, we could not exist. The fact that Israel is still here after all of this time, and that the Jewish people have been around for almost 4,000 years since Abraham, is a testament to the sovereignty of God. His name is in us. And because God is sovereign, and this world is under his control, and his people Israel are here, then surely this world that has been restructured for the sake of who? Of Abraham, and overflowing with what some might be able to relate to as, let's say, grace, right? Surely God's prized possession, his Torah, can be given to his people because the world is filled with his grace. So the Torah is the law, yes, but this same law is grace itself, i.e. the perfect law of freedom. We don't want to dismiss the law. This is all we've been teaching here. The only thing that can save this world from ceasing to exist once time is no longer a thing is Torah itself, because it goes beyond space and time. And our only connection to it is in the spiritual, not in the physical. We can't take anything with us. That's why when we follow Torah and we do the mitzvot, we connect ourselves to the oneness of God. Which is why, if we attach ourselves, then we move on, basically. We do not cease to exist once everything ceases to exist. So that, as you can see, leads to the resurrection of the dead. And then what happens at the resurrection? If not a renewal of creation. Which creation? The first one. In other words, this is the process that we have to go through in order to get back to where we belong. Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. What is Kedem? In the Garden of Eden. Not afterwards. In the beginning, the very beginning, maybe even before the beginning. That's why the process is called teshuvah, right? Do tshuva. What is tshuva? Lashuv, to return to God, the source, and become one with one singularity. Echad im hayachid. Echad is one, Shema Yisrael Hashem Eloheinu Hashem Echad, but yachid is singular. All of our echad will become with one, with the yachid, with the singularity, and that is God. And just like there is 1, 2, 3 count, there's a 1, 2, 3 count, the world as we know it is finite and has a time limit of about 6,000 years. We're going to get into some interesting stuff right now, just a little bit. So this countdown began at the creation of man, 6,000 years, okay? It's like the 6 days of creation. 1 day to God is like 1,000 years to man. I think that's from Psalm, I don't recall, but yes, you know it's there. So in any case, these 6,000 years, there are 3 stages and 3 ages to these 6,000 years. The first one, Tovavo, as in Tovavo from the beginning, the age of chaos, formless and void. That's the first 2,000 years. The second is the age of Torah, the second 2,000 years. And the third is the age of Messiah, the final 2,000 years. So according to many of the teachings and writings in Kabbalah and in the Talmud, the world has a 6,000 year period of existence from the beginning to the end. So there is a clock. So just like the 6 days of creation, and then we move on to the Shabbat, which is what Christianity would call the millennial reign, if you will. This is why the Shabbat is the gateway to what is to come. Now, the first 2,000 years of chaos were called that because there was a world without Torah. No Torah. Because there was no one worthy of giving the Torah to. Then Abraham came along. Abraham was born in the year 1948 to the creation of the world. Now, if you guys don't know this, do you think that it's any coincidence that the nation of Israel that we are currently in today has been reestablished in the Gregorian year of 1948? Coincidence? I think not. Come on. I was thinking, if that's the case, then are we missing 52 years, right? Abraham is the one that ushered in the age of Torah. So, we're missing 52 years to the year 2000. Now, because it was Abraham, the whole world will be blessed through him, through the promise, through the covenants. This is the Torah. So, then I remembered reading the book of Jasher. Now, the book of Jasher gives an account, a backlog account as to what happened behind the scenes. So what happened on the 52nd year of Abraham? This is very interesting. This would be exactly the closing of the age of chaos and entering into the age of Torah. At exactly 52, on his 52nd birthday, actually, Abraham took his first steps towards the land of Israel. I know in the Torah, Lech Lecha starts at the age 75, but this happened before the age 75. Now, he didn't even make it into the land up until 3 years later, but that doesn't matter for him to usher in the age of Torah, you see? The age of Torah began when he who has been called by God takes his first steps in that direction. This is amazing. You don't have to complete it. We're not called to necessarily complete anything. God is going to complete everything, but we're called to move. So I'll just read a few verses from the book of Jasher so you have a reference. So this is chapter 12:45. And the expiration of 2 years from Abraham's going out of the fire, he got thrown in the fiery furnace by Nimrod when he was 50 years old. And he was fine, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the book of Daniel. That is the 52nd year of his life. Behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne, and the king fell asleep. And he dreamed that he was standing with his troops and hosts in a valley opposite the king's furnace. So long story short, Nimrod had a dream that Abraham was going to destroy him, and so he ordered his men to kill Abraham again. So moving to verse 63 until the end of the chapter, it says, and Abraham was concealed in Noah's house, so he fled from there, in Noah's house for 1 month until the king had forgotten this matter. But Abram, not even Abraham, but Abram was still afraid of the king. He was scared. And Terah came to see Abram, his son, secretly to the house of Noah. And terror was very great in the eyes of the king. And Abram said to his father, oh, this is Old English, does thou not know that the king thinketh to slay thee? Sorry, it says me. Anyway, and to annihilate my name from the earth by the advice of his wicked counselors. Now whom hast thou here, and what hast thou in this land? Arise, let us go together to the land of Canaan, that we may be delivered from his hand, lest thou perish also through him in the latter days. Dost thou not know, or hast thou not heard, that it is not through love that Nimrod giveth thee all this honor, but it is only for his benefit that he bestoweth all these good upon thee? I'm breaking my teeth here. And if he do unto thee greater good than this, surely these are only vanities of the world, for wealth and riches cannot avail in the day of wrath and anger. Now therefore, hearken to my voice. He's speaking to his father. Hearken to my voice, and let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of the reach of injury from Nimrod, and serve thou the Lord who created thee in the earth, and it will be well with thee. And cast away all the vain things which thou pursuest. Cast away all the vain things which thou pursuest. Are thou casting away all the vain things which thou art pursuing? And Abraham ceased to speak when Noah and his son Shem answered Terah, saying, true is the word which Abram hath said unto thee. I'm almost done with this. And Terah hearkened to the voice of his son Abram. And Terah did all that Abram said, for this was from the Lord, that the king should not cause Abram's death. And now just the first verse of the next chapter, 13. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Ur-Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there. For it was exceedingly good, a good land of pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. Wow. My friends, just because you breathe, it doesn't mean that you're alive. It's not when Abraham was born. It's when, anyway. Abram had to flee, not only from those who tried to kill him and directly who opposed God, but then he had to leave his father's house afterwards and everything he knew in order for God to do the things that needed to be done. So he should become the man that he needed to be. Some of us might live and die and not make a difference, but everyone out there, both Jew and Gentile, we have a walk to walk. And so please just remember, it's a process. It's a race. You're not where you used to be right now. Just look back. And you better not be in the future where you are right now, because that means you're not going anywhere. I'm walking. You're walking. Now let's just see if we're walking in the same direction, shall we? It's good to take a knee every now and again. We all need a break. That's what vacations. Even God gave this to us, right? Because He knows our weaknesses. Just to take a breather and get our bearings. But you finish that race. How? One step at a time. That's how you finish a marathon. It's just one step at a time, one foot before the other. Don't even look at the finish line. You're not going to see it. One foot in front of the other, guaranteeing that you're moving forward. You conquer that mountain, one foothold at a time. If you get greedy, you're going to slip. And if you get angry, you're going to fall. Now, I want you to understand something. The Hebrew calendar, and this is interesting, the Hebrew calendar as of today stands at 5779. So if we're going into the year 6000. So according to this, we have about 221 years to the end of the age. What age? The Messianic age, because that's where we're in right now. We are in the Messianic age for almost 2,000 years. This is the last of the three. In other words, the Messiah has until that time, up until the year 6000, to come and reveal himself to the world. Now, if we are good, he comes before this time. And if we're undeserving, it's at the end of the age. But there's a very well-known discrepancy in this count. It's widely agreed upon by the Orthodox rabbis, okay? There are somewhere between 182 and 186 years missing in the timeline, which would put us somewhere between the year 5961 to 5965, which means that we have closer to between 45 and 49 years until the year 6000. Exciting times. This is why I believe more and more people are, being called, getting zapped left and right. Yeah, this is when there was during the Babylonian exile, all the calendars got mixed up. In any case, you could do your own research. The point is, it's between 45 and 49 years until the end of the age, as we know it. Now, again, this could be a speculation, but these are the things that I have learned, so go have fun with that. When God speaks to you, he speaks directly to you. Nobody else hears it. That's your call. So you best be picking up, because I can guarantee if you're sitting here watching this right now, for better or for worse, regardless of your agenda, the phone's ringing. And by the way, it's God. Don't be rude. Don't be lazy. Don't be scared to answer the call. It's going to keep ringing and ringing and ringing until it stops. That's when you can begin to be afraid. When you think that God has already done everything for you and all you have to do is wait, that the law is done away with, and that all you have to do is believe on your own understanding of what suits your lifestyle best, be very afraid. If you're going to invoke Abraham, then please make sure you at least attempt to live like him. Answer the call. Get out of your life. Get out of your own way. And go. This is called dying to self, in case you're wondering. Letting go of your own wants and your own ideas. If it's not in his plan and he's called you, it doesn't matter. Look at Jonah. He didn't want to go. You can either walk willingly or get dragged kicking and screaming. So this reminds me also of that movie Heat, if you've seen it, with De Niro and Pacino, although Val Kilmer was like the MVP of the movie. If you've seen it. So forget the context for this quote. It's just a movie. It's not scripture. All right. It's just the line that stuck out to me when I was studying this. De Niro says, he was the bad guy, right? Don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. See now, what we get to do, we get to take matters of the world, which is the profane, and bring them into context, thereby elevating our Torah study and making it holy. Good stuff. So the attachment, okay? Let's now put these things into this context. The attachment is the ego and the physical. And the heat, well, the heat is the fire that God's going to turn up and get you to move your butt. Nimrod to Abraham. So let's go back to these three matters, these three inyanim. These three counts all come with this one specific calling. This verse is taken from Isaiah 48:12, where it says, "Hearken to me, O Jacob, and Israel, who was called by me. I am he, I am the first, yea, I am the last." Shema, hear me, Elai, to me, Yaakov, Ve'Yisrael, Mekorai. This comes from the word Vayikra. Ani hu, I am he, Ani rishon, af ani acharon. 1, the renewal of the world. I am the first. 2, the giving of the Torah to Israel. I am he. And 3, the resurrection of the dead. I am the last. The most significant one, as far as we are concerned, human beings living here right now in this world, is the I am he. And why? Because we weren't there to fully experience creation, and we're not there right now at the resurrection of the dead, because it didn't happen yet. It also shows that God is true to his word when he introduces himself to Moses at the burning bush by the name of Yud-He Vav-He, aka Hashem, the name of God. Okay? Haya, Hoveh, Ve'Yihyeh. Was, is, and will be. And together we have Hashem, we have the name of God. And no, it's not Yahoo. He's outside of time and space. But since we are inside time and space, we can only relate to God in the present time, right now. Like now. And now. And now. These are the moments, not 2 seconds ago, that's gone, but now I can, and now I can. And this is how we are called. So, I am he, right now. So, what is the I am he directly? How is it related to us? It's the Torah. It's the age of Torah. In other words, my dearest friends, the tool that God gave us to connect with him, to creation and the resurrection of the dead, is right here in the middle. It's the Torah. Some of you might be getting upset right about now. Okay, I get it. Thinking to yourselves, well, Messiah is my connection to God. I say, sure, I got no dispute with that. But you think it's done? Okay. That door was just opening. That was for you to walk through. You got to now walk. Otherwise, explain this to me. And this is from the book of Matthew, of all places. He says, and he who endures till the end shall be saved. Are you saved now? You know what that means, right? It means you're not saved right now. If he endures to the end, will be saved. Okay, go figure that out. It means that it's not enough just to raise your hands and say, hallelujah, I believe. Work has to be done. You have work to do. You have a walk. You have a journey. You have a mountain. The function of Messiah. What is the function of Messiah? People forget this. The function of Messiah is to connect the spiritual to the physical. You also have to understand, if you think that Messiah is but a man, that's idolatry within itself. Listen to me. Messiah was here before the world was. The spirit over the deep in Genesis, that's King Messiah, according to the Tanya. The consciousness and combined souls of Israel, that makes up Messiah. Lubavitcher Rebbe talked about that. That's why we don't have pictures of Messiah. That's why we don't have engraved images of Messiah. And that's why we don't build statues or worship crosses, because all those are direct contradiction to the Word of God, the 10 Commandments, the first 3. If we want the truth, we have to get very, very real with ourselves. And we have to be prepared to be wrong. On all accounts, there was a time where I asked God for the truth. No matter the cost. I didn't want to go on living without the truth. I couldn't. I got to my breaking point. God had mercy on me and on my broken heart, and he showed me the truth. Long story short, here I am doing this, okay? One day. Never in a million years would this have ever occurred to me that this would happen, and yet, his will, not my own. And hi, I know you're here too, but you think this is a coincidence? Come on, we don't do coincidences, and neither does he. So let's get with the program. You're right here because that's exactly where you need to be. And if you don't understand now, don't worry, you're going to understand later. So here's something else that everyone needs to know. Why does the verse in Isaiah say, hearken to me, O Jacob and Israel? Why not just Israel, right? Everybody wants to be Israel. Why not just Israel? Well, see, many people want to be Israel. Many people believe they are Israel. Many people believe that they replaced Israel. So here's some basic Torah knowledge for everyone across the board. Okay, let's do some learning. My friends, you cannot be Israel without being part of Jacob. You cannot have the spiritual reward and the title without the physical tribulations. Because becoming Israel is a process that every individual has to go through. Oh yeah, it's the becoming that sets us apart. I can't be super spiritual without going through and overcoming my wretchedness personally. All my shortcomings, all my wretchedness, all the sin, everything, myself, overcoming myself. This is my Jacob working. And when I get squeezed and broken down and I have to pray for forgiveness because I am a wretch, that's a little bit of Israel shining through. You understand how that works? It goes deeper than that. So I'll prove this to you from the Word. How about this? Please open Genesis 32, 23 to 32. Verses 23 to 32. This is the story of Jacob wrestling with the man. Okay? So who is this man? No, this man is not Messiah, nor is he the angel of the Lord. All right? But he is rather the angel of death, also known as Hasatan. So I would say trust me on this. I've done my homework, but feel free to do yours anyway. But for the sake, for time's sake, just go with me on this, all right? I want you to take a look particularly at verse 29. And he said, who's he? Vayomer lo Yaakov yamer ot shimcha. This is Hasatan saying to Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanding power with gods and with men, and you have prevailed. So, was this Satan promoting Jacob? Did Satan just dub Jacob Israel? And if so, is that a good thing? Now, if you turn to Genesis 35:10, God said to him, Vayomer lo Elohim, Shimcha Yaakov, your name is Jacob. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. And he named him Israel. You see what God did there? Oh, it's the same thing. Is it? Your name will be Israel. But your rite of passage, baby, that's Jacob. And how, pray tell, does this rite of passage manifest, practically speaking, in the world today? Listen up. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. Do I have your attention? If you were the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Now, do you think he's speaking to the church? Out of all the world's religions today, the largest is Christianity. 2.4 billion Christians in the world today. Number 2 on that list is Islam, making up 1.8 billion. There's about 1.1 billion Hindus. We got about 500 million Buddhists and a bunch of other denominations. And the Jews, less than 15 million. Not billion, million. Okay? I don't know how else to say this, but by default, Christianity is the world. So it ain't the church we're talking about here. Think about it. Christians are persecuted in Muslim countries, as are anybody else in Muslim countries. That's not what I'm talking about. The majority by default is the world. So think about that. So, you think becoming Israel is easy? It's not easy. Becoming Israel is a becoming. You have to be prepared for persecution, just like the Jews have been for the last, forever. And yet, here we are, less than 0.01% of the world who have been hated since we became a nation. You want in? Then you got to walk out. But not until you get the call. Pray for that hearing heart and count the cost. So if you want to call yourself Israel without being Jacob, just remember, who just casually hounded out that title? It was Satan. Right. Only God can call you Israel. And he gave us laws to, in order for that to be so. See, Satan, the adversary, he wants you to think that you are Israel without any of the responsibility. He's a liar, is he not? And he's actually doing his job. Oh, and if you don't know this, here's just a little bit more fuel for your spiritual fire. Satan, Hasatan, the angel of death, is the personal guardian angel of who? Esav. And who is Esav if not Edom? And what is Edom if not the Christian world today? Do not be deceived, my friends. This was a command. So don't be afraid of where you are right now. Don't get discouraged. This is what I'm trying to say. You have to be humbled to the truth, and you will be guided in the right direction. You can bend it, you can twist it, you can replace it, or you can just, throw it away. But the bottom line is, you're going to have to give an account for all of it. We all struggle with what we know is the truth in our hearts and between what we want the truth to be, not only in a spiritual sense, but in everything throughout our entire lives. In Hebrew, it's called ben ha-matsui la-ratsui. Matsui is what is found, and ratsui is what is wanted. I don't have what I want. Okay, great. How do I get it? Now you're asking the right question. How do I get it? Because there is a way. Oh, the way. Interesting. I should write these things down. So, like I said, we have this struggle. But that struggle, that's your ego. And if you let it go, you can actually hear the call and maybe answer the call. Now, speaking of calls, this call that Moses received right here in the first words of the first book, of the third book of the first chapter in Vayikra, inhabits the three matters discussed earlier. The book of Genesis represents creation, Bereshit, at first. The book of Exodus represents the Torah, Shemot, the names. And 3, the book of Leviticus represents the resurrection of the dead, Vayikra. And he called who? He called the dead to rise. In addition, the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, is the middle book out of the 5 books of Moses, right? It's also known as the book of priests. And as we read through it, we will see all about the laws of eating kosher, purification, sanctification, the works of the Mishkan, the korbanot, the sacrifices, and so on. All this is done not only for that time, but has been done for our time now, and is a glimpse of the end of days and how we are to worship the Lord, according to His words and not according to our own understanding. This is done by who? The Kohanim, the priests, specifically from the line of Aaron, out of the tribe of Levi. I'm not a Kohen. I'm an Israel. I'm not throwing a fit, okay? They have their jobs. I have mine. You have yours. And we all got to do our job. In the 5 books, if the 5 books of Moses are the tree of life, this middle book is its heart. It is the essence of all things that were, that are, and that are to come, which is why I cannot stress this call enough to you. Would you like to know what Moses and Moses alone heard? I'll tell you. It was the letter Hey. That's what was calling to Moses. This can be found in Genesis 2:4. Ele toldot hashamayim va'aretz behi bar'am beyom asot Adonai Elohim eretz v'shamayim. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created on the day that the Lord God made earth and heaven. Behi bar'am, we've discussed this last week and many times before. Behi bar'am be'avraham, in Abraham. Now the letter Hey in the word is a little hey you'll see in the actual Torah scroll. This is the same Hey that God would later place in Abraham's name, calling him Abraham. Abraham, with the Hey. This is the glory of God that He placed in His name and all those who would enter into the covenant with God through Him. This is the Hey that was calling Moses from within the Mishkan. This is the call that only Moses heard. And why did only Moses hear it? See, the letter Aleph in Vayikra, in this first word, it's a small Aleph. Aleph stands for God, Aluf, the Alpha, if you will. Moses possessed the little Aleph, within him. Why? Only because of his humility. That's why he could hear it. So God called out to his own personally, privately, face to face. And let me tell you something else. Moses himself was called the angel of the Lord. He needed no intercessor, and he was the only one. I think it's safe to say that Moses, who was a shepherd himself, knew his own shepherd's voice. So I'm so grateful, guys, that this word was given this week. Perfect timing. Yeah. God always has perfect timing. He's never early, he's never late. We're the ones that got problems. I'm so grateful that this particular word was given this week. As always, with God, his timing is perfect. So for those of you out there right now who are going through an identity crisis, please just go through it. Allow it to happen. Don't freak out. You're not making it happen. It is happening to you. It is currently being done to you. Something is working inside of you. Just slow down and observe. See what happens. Now, let's sprinkle some of Solomon's wisdom just on top of all this, right? Just it's a little bit of sugar on top. Ecclesiastes 5, verses 1 and 2. And this might be able to help us navigate through these difficult times. Be not rash with your mouth, and let your heart not be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. For a dream comes with much concern, and the voice of a fool with many words. This is where Rabbi Akiva derived the now very popular saying, Seag lechochma shtika. A reservation for wisdom is silence. Lishtok means to shut your mouth. I'm not saying shut your mouth, but that's quite literally the translation. Solomon also said that the reverence of God is the beginning of wisdom. See how that's connected? We all need to slow down. We need to check ourselves, okay? We need to check our pride. We need to pay attention and understand. Why do we fall? We have to trust that there is justice for all, and it depends entirely on your point of view. And when you finally smell what the rock is cooking, you'll understand that home is where the heart is. But the path less taken will only be revealed to you once you see that there is no spoon. My friends, when you arrive there, and I pray that you do, stand firm, move forward, and don't be afraid of the dark. So pick up, answer the call. It's Abba, and it's been a while, maybe even the first time. Thank you all so much for your support, your patience, your understanding, your willingness to learn, your questions, your conversations, your reaching out, and most of all, thank you so much for sharing your hearts with me, personally, publicly. Like I said, bring it. All right, well, stay tuned for next week. I actually have something hilarious planned for you. Next week is Purim, so I'll see you guys then. And as always, have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye.